How's it going, people? Back again for another stream. Welcome back to Football's 12th Man podcast. The race for Europe is now done. The season is back. And now we're going to chat about the fight for survival. I feel bad putting these guys in a fight for survival and assuming they're going to be down there. So I'm really hoping that some of the teams can prove me wrong and that they can come on the Best of the Rest show, which will be tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. I want to welcome you all in the chat. I want to ask you all to hit a like and subscribe on this video. Follow all of the guys on socials. You'll see all of their tags, and I've put all of their podcasts and socials in the description. So please come and make sure you sub and follow and support the guys. Well, first of all, I'm going to welcome Sam back to the Premier League. Bournemouth fan, Back of the Net podcast. How the devil are you, sir?
Very well, mate. Even better after the weekend. So yeah, pleased to be back in the Premier League.
I bet you are, man. Got to welcome Matt, our Brentford fan. How are you, bro?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, glad to be here. Not as much of a result as Bournemouth, but still pretty happy with the weekend's fixture. So yeah, pretty good, pretty positive.
Had worse days, man. Had worse days. Someone who's had better days though is Des. Des, our Forest fan. How are you, bro?
I'm good. I'm just happy to be in the Premier League after so long. It didn't start too well on Saturday, but hopefully it was. We come up against a good side, and they'll prove that, and we can kick on from West Ham on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Let's hope that you can kick on. And do you know what I love is the fact that, you've said we're back in the Premier League. And I love that because you do get some fans that go and they're fickle, aren't they? Oh, my God, everything's doom and gloom. We've lost our first game back in the Premier League. Sometimes reality does kick in and you think, well, how important it is. When you go up and then you go down, it must be, I wish we would have enjoyed the days more when we're in the Premier League because sometimes it can be a long time, as I'm sure you do know, Des. But I will start with Bournemouth. Sam, I've got to come to you, man. I thought it was the shock of the weekend. I can't lie. It's no disrespect to Bournemouth. I don't look at Steven Gerrard and Aston Villa and think, wow, but a lot of the media do. They all had Aston Villa down as favourites. I don't think anybody predicted Bournemouth to turn them over. But from what I saw, mate, I was quite impressed. Bournemouth, I've got to be straight up honest with you. I've tipped you to go down. I can't sit there and lie and give you BS and start bigging you up and blowing smoke up your a-hole. But I will say that I do think Bournemouth really impressed in certain parts of that game. And although it wasn't like, wow, no one's touching them this season, I think you can come away as a Bournemouth fan thinking, okay, I'll take that. I'm happy. So talk to me about the thoughts of the game, bro.
Yeah, I think a lot of Premier League fans might be expecting the same Bournemouth to appear as we did in 2015, where it was completely different. At that time, we played a very gung-ho style. You score 3, we'll score 4, that kind of thing. It was very entertaining to watch. Now, though, under Scott Parker, it's a lot more disciplined. Last season in the Championship, we had the leanest defence, and that's hopefully going to carry on into the Premier League. So he's changed his formation now to 3 at the back. So some people say it's a very negative style, but we tend to pick our moments. And this season, we're going to be big on set pieces as well. And that was evident on Saturday, 2 set pieces and 2 goals. And even in the post-match interviews, there were Aston Villa players saying that we were a big and physical side, not something that we're used to hearing, but he's got this kind of style and formation now that's working. And this season, we've got to take matches like that and use them to our advantage. I know we're constantly, derided for our small stadium, but that could be a massive advantage. So, yeah, with the games that we've got coming up, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, not easy. It was imperative, really, that we got 3 points, and we did. And but on the same note, I also want to say it was a very poor Aston Villa side as well. So, there's still work to do for us. Of course, new signings are coming through the door, but what a start! Yeah, really pleased.
Yeah, I bet you are. Matt, I'll come to you as a Brentford fan. You must have been looking at Bournemouth thinking, yeah, this is going to be interesting, see what they can do. They're a side that are tipped to go back down. Quietly impressed with them, bro?
Yeah, definitely. I didn't think you guys would do what you did. I was surprised by it. And at the beginning of the season, I'm guessing you'll be the same, Sam. You're looking at another 5 or 6 teams going, can we beat them? Do we definitely beat them at home? Can we nick a point away? And I thought Bournemouth might be the one that we maybe do the double, but I wasn't expecting it. And that stadium thing, 100% agree. We just left Griffin Park and moved to a new stadium. The atmosphere is amazing, but those small grounds when you're on top of players, I used to love it when Brentford were in League 1 and 2 when we go in the FA Cup and you get the big boys because they just don't want to be there. And a lot of these kind of players and teams of that magnitude don't want to go to smaller grounds because you can hear everything. So I think I think it'll do well in favour for you this season. And in terms of the game itself, we play really well.
Yeah, fair play to you, man. And I think you're talking facts there, and it just puts into reality, doesn't it? The clubs coming up and how you can make it hard for some teams and be that kind of shock factor. So I think you're spot on there, Matt. I want to come to you on that because I look at the Gerrard situation at Villa, and some people are questioning, what if Villa can do this season. They're tipping them to do very, very good in the top half. Some are even saying they can fight for European places. I differ with that. I don't look at that Aston Villa side and go, wow. And I certainly don't look at what Gerrard's done yet and go, you're top. I look at it and say, jury out. So as much as I'm bigging up Bournemouth, I don't still look at Aston Villa and think, that they are a very, very strong side. So how much of it did you put to Bournemouth looking well and how much of it was Aston Villa not turning up for you, Des?
I think you're right in saying that Aston Villa could be one of those teams that really struggle this year. I think Gerrard's under quite a bit of pressure because there is big expectation. What he did at Rangers, he's come in. They've spent lots of money over the last couple of years since they got promoted. I think if they don't start well, the pressure's going to start piling. And again, I tend to agree with you that I don't think the players are necessarily up to scratch. From a Forest perspective, I'm looking at my own team compared to a Newcastle and thinking, wow, look how strong they are in certain areas of the pitch. And I look at that Villa side and I can't see too much to be worried about. Again, like Matt says, you look at where you might get points coming into the Premier League. You think we could get points there or away we could nick a point. Aston Villa might be one of those teams. Of course, Bournemouth are as well, just like they'll be looking at Forest and thinking there's points available. But again, I think Bournemouth sort of coming up, automatic promotion. Of course, we was looking on them to fail towards the end. They kicked in again, shown a bit of resilience, to be fair. And I remember seeing that Scotty Parker half-time team talk. So there's a bit of steel in there. And I from the goal they scored against Forest, which virtually guaranteed promotion, set pieces are a real strength. So if they've kind of added that to some of the nice football, the tidy footballers they've got, goals from anywhere in the Premier League when you're at the wrong end are vitally important, aren't they? So it's another string to Bournemouth's bow. And again, against a fragile Villa side, it might be a way to sort of break them down and get through them. They tend to be very good, Aston Villa, or not very good at all. There's no medium with them, is there? Next week they could go and win 3-4-0. But I just think if they get on a run against teams like Bournemouth, they've got Everton next week. If they don't pick up the 3 points, it could be a long season for them as well.
Yeah, no, fair play to you. Sam, I want to come to your one player because a player a couple of years ago, Lee Judges said to me, I've seen this good player at Middlesbrough, looks absolute quality. It's James Tavernier's brother. And I said, okay, I don't know anything about this guy. He's now gone to Bournemouth, set up the goal, I believe, from the corner. And a lot of hype about this lad from some people a couple of years ago, but never really went on to hit his ceiling, certainly at Middlesbrough. But now he's gone to Bournemouth. What did you make of his debut, mate?
I thought he was really solid, actually. None of us were expecting him to play, to be honest, but he did. And he's a player that can play in a variety of positions, but he's fast, he's agile, he's really good on the ball. He's got a pretty good delivery, which, I mean, it wasn't a direct assist, but his corner, he was headed on to set up Lerma. And I thought he had a really good game. And, fans were a lot of fans were regarding him as man of the match material. And, to be honest, even though the sponsors went for someone else, I think he could be a really good acquisition for us. And look, a lot of sort of Championship fans, even Premier League fans are sort of wondering, why is he joined Bournemouth? Because they're dead certs for relegation. But I think the board and maybe Parker and the management have sort of convinced him that there's a chance that may not happen. I mean, Middlesbrough this season, might be pushing, with all the money that they've got through the door from their recent players that are left. I think they're going to be playing for, maybe the playoffs. I don't think autos, but some people have said they will be. And people have sort of questioned, well, can't he just wait a season? But no, I thought really good. And, if we do go down, we would certainly hope that he would stick around because he's a proven Championship player as well. And seems to be a bit of a thing that's happening with a lot of our signings in that they're not proven in the Premier League, but they're proven in the Championship. So that if the worst was to happen this season, at least we'd have a decent squad to hopefully get us back up there, because we would take being a yo-yo club, a club of our size, absolutely. And so there is a bit of a long-term vision in there as well. But no, I thought it was a really assured debut from him.
Yeah, I did too. And I got to say, like, if I offered you 17th place now, I'm sure you'd bite my hand off, Sam. But
Hmm.
did you think go into that game and think, do you know what? Maybe there's a chance of playing like that, little bit of a shock. Scott Parker, you give 110% and make sure his players do. Are you kind of looking at that any differently? I know it's only one game, but are you still thinking that, it's looking like we're going down? But perhaps there's a chance that you could stay up if things go your way.
Yeah, I think there could be. I mean, one thing that's really clear is that the players really buy into Scott Parker and his footballing philosophy, and they're hanging off his every word. He seems to be a really good man manager, trusts the youth. We had a couple of players who started last season, who started in the Premier League this season, who were in our development side only a few years ago. So, he's a person that gives responsibility to his players, and it's almost like players would like run through walls for him. And if he can, throughout the season, if he gets the best out of the team, then who knows? And but with our small stadium and all those kind of things, maybe we can have a few shock results like that. But I at the weekend, I did think it was going to be a case of us having to play really well and teams having to have an off day. I think that will be the case for probably the top 10. But based on what I've seen, we don't have to be brilliant. We just have to be really rigid in our formation. We've got two different formations on and off the ball, really disciplined. And when we've got set piece threats like Kiefer Moore up front, which was a player that we didn't expect to start, but we played a 3-5-2. We've always got a threat, so we'll have to use that to our strength. It's not quite anti-football like Burnley, but but you know what, we'll take it.
Listen, I think Burnley liked anti-football because it kept them in the Premier League. So
100%.
you won't hear too many complaints from Burnley fans, I wouldn't have thought. But Matt, let's come to you on expectations of Bournemouth. I think everybody does a prediction, don't they, at the start of the season? They're who's going to go down, who's going to win the league, where's your team going to finish, blah, blah. Where did you put Bournemouth and what's your expectations for them this season, bro?
I had Bournemouth going down. I think it's always that thing after you see the first game and then all your expectations change. I think if you see a team put together a performance like that, as a neutral or something that, like, you can see them staying up. And there's other clubs, and I've seen it when Norwich have come up before, and even like last season, you knew in the first few games, like, unless something drastic changes, they got no chance, and it panned out that way. I think you could stay up. I did have you to go down. I think you could stay up. I think it's interesting the point you made earlier as well about the signings that you've brought in. And Brentford have quite a similar policy. I think probably because of the wage structure being quite low as well. And, obviously for Brentford, Ericsson was an anomaly. It'll probably be the best player we'll ever see there. And it was just due to, extreme circumstances that he was there. And like, the one thing I would say about Ericsson, though, even though his class was amazing, his temperament on the ball is why I want more experience in the centre of the park. And we've done the same. We've kind of got those young players that haven't played in the Prem that are prospects and look amazing. But do you think there's a bit of a backup there in case we go down? I personally think so with some of our buy-ins. I think they'd be amazing for the Championship. But if you start buying 2, 3, 4 signers that haven't played in the Prem, you're kind of like hedging your bets a tiny bit. So, but in terms of Bournemouth, I think, stating the obvious, play like that for a few games this season, and I could see you avoiding it.
Well, weirdly, you're one of the sides that we're targeting, because when you're promoted, you're looking at 3 sides. And Brentford, it's a lazy stereotype, but the second season syndrome. Southampton at one stage we thought might get pulled in. Maybe they will, who knows? But they've strengthened a little bit. But then Fulham, who came up with us, brilliant performance against Liverpool. I think it's such an early stage to judge, and it's going to be even too early after 4 games, given the fact we're playing 3 top 6 sides. But I don't know, we've got some favourable fixtures in October and November as well, so I think that's probably the time when you can say, actually, yeah, they might do it or they might not.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I agree also. And I think that we will see around that time. It's early days, isn't it? 1 game in and we can start to predict already. We're starting to change our minds. It's mad how football goes. But I will say this about Bournemouth. What I've really been impressed by is, like you say, Sam, the buy-in. Scott Parker did similar at Fulham, to be fair. got them up in the playoffs, and he's done a good job, in my opinion, with Bournemouth. And long may it continue. They're a club I like. Really looking forward to going there. I've not been to Bournemouth's ground, and I'm finally going to watch Arsenal in a couple of weeks' time. So I'll look forward to how close you are to the players, because all I hear is good things about Bournemouth's ground. And as soon as you're promoted, all my Arsenal mates go, get in, because they love the stadium. They absolutely love the away day. So we'll certainly look forward to that one. That's for sure. There's just finally on Bournemouth, obviously as a Forest fan, you're probably looking at in and around the mix to be anticipated, at least to be fighting for survival with Bournemouth. Do you look at them as a kind of potential to stay up, or are they ones you think are going to go down for you?
I'll be completely honest. You said it yourself. When you do these tables, you put people in certain positions. I'll be completely honest. I had Bournemouth bottom, because I felt Forest had strengthened enough. I'm not quite sure about that anymore. We're fighting for the same pool of players. What we haven't signed is Premiership experience or much Championship experience. We've signed Bundesliga players and players from abroad. So it's interesting that you speak about Taverner, because Forest will link with him as well. It'd be interesting to see how he gets on. And again, we're all fighting. Brentford have said it there as well. We're all fighting for the same group of players. So we're in that little league, aren't we? That little mini league at the bottom of the Premiership, where the players we link with, the abilities are not too dissimilar. It'll be about who gets on form. It looks like Bournemouth, Fulham looked really good at the weekend as well. Both the other promoted sides looking really sort of up for the fight. Forest have struggled. So it's, again, without sort of getting carried away, I think we can go through it. And again, I think it's going to be a fight all season between the teams that came up, the likes of Brentford, perhaps a Leeds or a Southampton, and even a Wolves. Talk about, I know it's not quite second season syndrome, but Wolves have been there a little bit and just dropped off. So I think if Bournemouth, of course, they've got a tough fixture next week, looking at the fixtures, probably could have done with a slightly easier one to get on a little bit of a roll. Because I think that's what I'm getting to almost, is it's the teams that get on that roll early on, isn't it? I think back to Sheffield United a few years ago, Brentford, when they started, they got a few wins under the belt, some points on the board, and it was so important sort of later on when the season really kicks in and it starts biting back a little bit. It's important to have points on the board, and that's a slight concern of mine with Forest. I'm sure we'll come to that, but it's about getting those points on early, and every game that's winnable, when you're not playing Man City, Liverpool or whoever, or if you can nick a point here and there, every single point's vital at this stage of the season. So I think Bournemouth winning, just sets a bit of a marker down to the other teams that have come up and just says we're up for the fight as well.
I think that's fair. I think that's really fair, actually, Des. We're going to move on from Bournemouth. Before we do, Sam, you're not going to be a fan of Nick Saunders in the chat who thinks that it's going to be Man City 8, Bournemouth 0. Listen, let's hope it's not for your sake, but Haaland is on absolute form. So it'll be interesting to see. It's not the team you want to be coming up against after a good victory, but you got to play everybody. This is the Premier League, and if you want to be in it, you have to play the best. So that's what it's all about. We're going to come on to Brentford next. Matt, I'm going to come to you, bro. I said when I started this channel, I will be watching all the highlights. I'll be watching all the games, and I won't miss any because I'll look like a fool. And I didn't watch Leicester Brentford because I haven't had time, because it weren't on TV, and I didn't have time to watch Match of the Day. So I can't give much of an opinion, mate. So I'm glad you're on. Talk to me about the game. Talk to me about Brentford's performance. And are you happy with the result, mate?
Very happy with the result. I think you'd have to have blinkers on to not think that Leicester probably should have nicked it. I think for the first 65 minutes, they were coasting, and I'd be worried about them about seeing a game out, because 2-0 up, they were just dominating the game. We didn't really have a sniff, and then we got back into it. The goal from Josh Da Silva, the equaliser in the 85th or 87th minute, was sublime. I think he's actually former Aston, I believe. But yeah, absolutely class. Yeah. But he's brilliant. He's had a hip injury. He's been out for 18 months, I think it is. So to come back and do that was phenomenal. But I did see positives there. We conceded from a corner again, and I don't even know the stats to back it up, but we concede far too many goals from corners. And I think because our back three or formation rotates, that we have a few different people in there. I can see it from the sidelines where will go between man to man and then zonal, and there's just a bit of a disconnect between everyone. And we just concede too much like it. And it's so frustrating when you're kind of in a game away from home, you know, you're going to have less possession against Leicester. It's fine. You deal with it. You sit tight. But then to throw it away from a direct corner every time. And it's so like happened to us. We lost to Wolfsburg 4-0 in pre-season, which, you know, you can only gauge so much by pre-season. And it was a kind of slightly understrength squad. But I think we conceded 2 or 3 from corners in that game. Like, just unforgivable. And you will get punished in the Prem. And that's my biggest concern for us, is wasting goals like that, putting in a deep kind of strong performance and then throwing it away on a set piece, especially a corner. It's there's a lot of positives, but that's the one that I'm still worried about. And you just think, like, how haven't people specifically worked on that on the training ground and over-indexed on it? Because you will lose games from those positions, and we're lucky to get the 2-2. And it's a really good point, but can't be giving those goals away week in, week out.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think it's something you need to work on. But I don't know your thoughts on this. A lot of people I've spoken to, we did a prediction show on Hybrid Squad the other week, and I put Brentford nowhere near going down. But a lot of people did. I was on there with Kevin Campbell. Kevin Campbell predicted Brentford to have a second season where you have a second season syndrome and you go down like Sheffield United. Harry Simew said exactly the same. I don't know where this has come from. Maybe it's just they're just comparing you to Sheffield United. Do you see why people are looking at that, Matt? Is it unfair? Is it harsh?
No, I think there's substance in there. I think when you combine the second season syndrome, plus you look at the stats of when Eriksen joined us last season, you know, we were on a real bad downward spiral. I think it would be naive to put those two things together and come up with us being relegated. But there are questions, there are problems. I think if we sign Damsgaard, which I think should be done today or tomorrow, fingers crossed, that's a huge bolster to the squad. And just think of you guys, Des and Sam as well. I think when you look at the Premier League teams, when you look at your own team in the Premier League, it's not good enough to just have a good starting 11. When you get to the Prem, you start realizing that you need cover in every position. And I'm looking at the squad, and we've got a heavy midfield. And then looking at other bits, we're slightly weak in certain areas. And it's just like, especially with the 5 subs being introduced this season as well, which is probably a whole different talk in itself, but like very much favors the bigger teams. So I'm looking at our squad being like, our first 11, I think, can do bits. But when it comes to January, February, when those injuries and those knocks start coming in, have we got enough cover? Not sure. And all you can do then is look at the other clubs around you and go, hopefully they got less cover than we have, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree with Christian in the chat here. Damsgaard, what a quality signing. I really think it would be. And I definitely agree with you in relation to how poor Brentford were looking until that Eriksen signing. And for me, it was chalk and cheese. And I think that a lot of people are looking at that and saying, where's that replacement coming? And if he can come in and do that half of that job that Eriksen done, I think that you will be okay. I also believe Brentford have got a fantastic manager. And I think that always is what you look at. You know, I get slated by Arsenal fans for saying that, you know, we should have had a winner of a manager like a Conte or a Simeone instead of an Arteta. But I do stand by that the elite manager will always get you there a few extra points and drag you into where you need to be. And I think Conte is an example of that with Spurs last season, that Nuno was never getting them into the top 4. But Conte put them straight in there with one transfer window, signing Kulusevski and Bentancur. Now, that wouldn't have happened under Nuno. So that, to me, just shows that the manager is so important. And Thomas Frank, I think, deserves a lot of credit for what he did last season. Des, let's come to you, because I want to get your opinions on Brentford and whether you think that it's fair for people to start putting them in the bracket of relegation.
Fair is possibly not quite the right word, because you look at it from the outside, you know, as somebody who doesn't see a great deal of Brentford, who's not been watching them closely for the last couple of seasons, and they've lost their best player. You know, that's obvious. He's gone to Man United, Eriksen. And they're always going to suffer from that, aren't they? Like the Southamptons and other teams, when they get a good player, they're quickly moved on to another team. And it's how well you survive that. Southampton have been the masters at it for years, just rechurning a new back line or a new front line. And you see the names Ivan Toney linked away as well as is worrying. So it's easy to sort of make that assumption. But again, thinking back to Brentford in the Championship and what you just said about Thomas Frank there, you know, they're a really good football side, really pleasing to watch. A result like Sunday, you know, shows that they've got a little bit of resilience to dig in. 2-0 down, nobody would have expected to come back. You would expect Leicester to play that out, but they've dug in, they've got the point. And again, at this stage of the season, I'll just go back to what I said about Bournemouth. It's just about getting those points on the board, isn't it? Building your own confidence and then making people believe that you're here for a purpose. You're here to stay, and that's something that I think Brentford did that last year. We was all expecting them to be bottom of the league. We was all expecting them to sort of get the worst points total ever. But win after win, confidence builds. And whilst that's happening, points are getting on the board. Teams start taking you seriously, playing differently against you. And then they have to work you out, don't they? And this is where the second season syndrome comes in. Because Brentford have been worked out a little bit. People know what Thomas Frank is now, what he's going to ask his Brentford sides to do. So they just need to show that little bit of adaptability. 1 or 2 different players will make it interesting. But I actually think Brentford have got plenty enough about them to stay up. I don't really see them as one of the teams that are going to be really, really struggling all season.
There you go, Matt. Maybe I need to promote you up to another show, bro. Do you know what I mean? Let's see what happens.
It's good to hear. I wish I had that confidence, but yeah, no, I hear what you're saying.
One player, Sam, who I think is definitely going to be key to them staying up is Ivan Toney. I think he's a great player and one that I think Brentford fans would be really happy that they've kept hold of so far. No, the window's still open, but it doesn't look to me like, Matt can correct me if I'm wrong, that it looks that he's leaving. There's no huge rumours or heavy rumours that he's linking with a side elsewhere. Am I right, Matt?
Yeah, pretty much the same old stuff went around. So Newcastle obviously went from, talk of signing Neymar at some point in time to now focusing their attentions on Ivan Toney. But he came from Newcastle, not before us, but a few clubs down the line. I don't think he had a particularly good relationship there. So hopefully not. I've heard him linked with United and Arsenal. But I feel a lot of those rumours start when there's a vacant striker position. Obviously now that Arsenal have got Jesus, couldn't see him at United, but maybe. But yeah, it's died down. As I said, the transfer window is still open, so you never know. But I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him stay, and I think it works for him there as well. I think he's the kind of talisman up top. Good goal return last season. I think in terms of English sort of stat, he was like only under Harry Kane in terms of English players last year for goals, goals and assists. But yeah, I think he'll be there by the end of this window at least.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I think, Sam, he's right there. There's only Tammy Abraham and Harry Kane that scored more in Europe that's an English striker. So I look at Ivan Toney as a real threat. I think he's a handful to play against. And I think he's going to be the main reason as to why Brentford are going to be fine this season. What's your thoughts, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of seasons ago in the Championship, he was their talisman then. And, they beat us in the playoff semi-final, really did deserve to go up. And they did. And one thing that Thomas Frank didn't really do is change his footballing philosophy much. He stuck to it, and that was really good because it stood them in really good stead for a superb season. And as long as he keeps to that, then Ivan Toney is absolutely key for it. And there are so many strikers that you question whether they're going to make it to the next level. And he was one of them, but he did. And, people are asking the same things about Mitrovic this season. He scored 2 already. People are asking the same questions about Dom Solanke. But yeah, he's a real key player for them. And, as long as he keeps banging them in, they've certainly got a chance. And just one thing worth noting. 2-2 on the face of it at Leicester. That's a really good result. And I know that maybe they, should have lost it just at the end there, but they had 50% of a new defence with Ben Mee, who, by all accounts wasn't amazing. He was at fault for the second goal, but then Hickey as well on the right. It's early days for them. And you will always get these freak results at the start of the season.
Is that my computer or is that his computer?
I think that was Sam's.
Can you still hear
Sam,
me?
I think you froze. Oh, you're back. You're back.
Yeah. I think, when you've got Brentford v Leicester, it's a fixture where pretty much anything can happen with their, they've got, really fast attacking players. And when you're playing against a fairly new defence, like 50%, then you're going to get sort of results that don't really dictate how the rest of your season is going to go. So I think, it is early days. I predicted them to be around about the bottom. But I think maybe 10 games in we'll know more. But I'll be quietly confident if I were them at staying up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so would I. This is why I invited Sam back on, because he reads my minds. The next two players I was going to mention were Ben Mee and Aaron Hickey, Matt, because obviously you've signed them. Brentford haven't made any massive signings. And to be fair, I didn't expect them to. I think Damsgaard will probably be one that they'd look at and say, okay, we're really confident about. But Aaron Hickey was linked with Arsenal, and it was a player that I looked at and I actually quite rated. At Bologna, Scottish left back. One of the lads I know from Scotland, always follows Scotland everywhere they go, says this kid actually looks really good. Can play right back as well, I believe, and left back. So what do you make of the signing so far for Brentford, bro?
I'm happy with him. I think, as you said, with Hickey, he's both footed, so he actually played right back, and I think the progression for him will be at right back, because it's been, you know, on our left side we have Rico Henry, who's absolutely class and kind of rarely puts a foot wrong, whereas right back we kind of were playing with the three in the middle and then the wing backs. So we had Sergi Canos, who's more of an attacking player, who is still very good, but I think was struggling a bit last year. So yeah, Hickey at right back. I'll be the first to say as well, like, I'm never a fan of putting someone like on the opposing foot on each flank. I think maybe in the Championship you can get away with it. I feel like in the Premier you might get found out, but one game in, looks all right. Ben Mee, kind of to the point I was making earlier with Eriksen, I feel like Brentford don't or didn't have that kind of experience in the middle. And Eriksen offered that as well as an abundance of skill. And I think Ben Mee didn't have a blinder first game, but he is that resilience that I think we need in there as well. Aya, who's fantastic, who came from Celtic, has been injured, but you know, we going back to the strength in depth. Like there's a lot of players vying for those positions, so quite happy with it. Damsgaard will be massive, and I think a lot hinges upon that. But otherwise, yeah, I think we're never going to go out and buy kind of huge players. Even as we were talking earlier, Sam, about like the wage structure as well. I looked at like Aaron Ramsey came up, and I thought, wow, that'd be an amazing signing, but you know, we wouldn't get anywhere near him. And so it proved with Eriksen, for whatever reason he went to United, you know, they weekly transfers, weekly wage was significantly more than we can offer. So I think you just have to be a bit realistic sometimes and hope those players that are kind of prospects from the Championship or around Europe do materialize to Premier League players. And then, you know, maybe in a few years you sell them on for 35, 40 million. But in terms of reality, I'm happy with what we've done in the transfer window this time around.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I don't know what like your highest earners on, Matt. I mean, what are they actually earning a week? I wouldn't even know. I mean,
I think like Ivan Toney was on 8. I think it's something I've read before 80. I don't know if that's right or not, but yeah, I mean, nothing huge, which is great. I mean, it's always been the way with Brentford. Sometimes, you know, Championship and League One, you get the clubs that come down, have the parachute payments, and can still afford to buy those bigger players. Whereas we've never really had it. And to be honest, I quite enjoy it. They've, you know, the scouting process at Brentford is a high profile, good kind of level. So you kind of just put your faith in them and hopefully it works out.
Do you find it weird having these conversations, Matt? Like players on 80 grand a week. We're used to League One football for most of our supporting life. Isn't it? So they're weird conversations to have, aren't they?
Yeah, just when you hear stuff like, you know, players on 200 grand, like, it's just like it becomes a figure that's just astronomical as well. You're like, it stops making sense at a certain point, and you're like, it's just, and you can never quite fathom like what that would actually. Imagine looking at your bank account and seeing that got made up.
But surely that just shows how far you guys have come. Do you know what I mean? It looks at it, you know, you make a great point, Sam, and that's why you guys should be positive. And I have a lot of respect for teams that come up, and I have a lot of respect for them that try and give it a go, because they know that they enjoy it, home and away. They know they're probably going to get battered by City. You know that sometimes you'll come up against teams like Liverpool and Chelsea on their day, and you'll think, yeah, let's just enjoy it, because we're not expected to win. We've got nothing to lose. We can only win in this scenario, really, because it's a bonus if you take anything from the game, whether it be a point or 3. And I wish sometimes I could go into games like that. And I get so stressed out and go into bloody games against City and Liverpool and still pull my hair out and we get battered 4 or 5-0. But that's another story. This is not an Arsenal podcast. Otherwise, I will rant on about them. But no, Matt, listen, I think you make great points, and I think you've been fair and honest with your opinion of Brentford this season. And I want to move on to Forest if I can next. I'm going to say it now, Des, right? I'm going to say this now, and I've said it on other podcasts. You are my tip for the surprise package of the season. and then you went and did that against Newcastle. I thought, oh no, but I know it's only one game, and I know Newcastle are a good side, and they really are, by the way. I think what Eddie Howe's done there is great, and I think the last season, I think they had unbelievable stats, and their form was right up there with Liverpool and Man City if you started it from when Eddie Howe first took over. So I expected Newcastle to win. That's not my point. I tipped you for this for two reasons. I think you've got a never say die attitude fan base. I think you've got a never say die attitude squad. And I think you've got a never say die attitude manager. I am so impressed with what I've seen from Steve Cooper. This guy is unbelievably good. I thought that when you took you over, Arsenal were bottom of the league. And I spoke to Mr. Dorr, who you know very well. And Nottingham Forest were bottom of the league as well. And we had a chat. I thought, bloody hell, this ain't looking good for us, mate, is it? And then we got you in the FA Cup and you beat us, and we had a bit of banter with Mr. Dorr about it. And I looked at Steve Cooper and I thought, this guy looks like he's got something about him. Like, he really does. He looks like he's going down fighting. To take you from 20th place to put you in the playoffs and almost get you through to automatic, to then fall down with the disappointment of that, but still raise you up and take you away in the playoffs. I think you've got to give your side, your players, your fan base, and your manager a lot of credit. They're a team that I do have a lot of respect for, and I love the fact they're back in the Premier League. I can't lie, but I really do fancy you as a surprise package. And people say to me, "Where is that then? What does that mean?" I don't look at Forest as winning the league. I don't look at Forest as winning a cup. I don't look at Forest as getting anywhere near Europe. But I look at Forest to be floating in and around the top half of that table, whether it be 10th, 11th, 12th, just because I look at what Steve Cooper's about, and I think he demands the best. And I really like what I'm seeing from him. So I might have bigged you up there massively, and you might be in a relegation fight there now. But I'm talking. I've got to say, I'm using what I'm seeing with my pair of eyes, and I like what he's doing. So, what's your thoughts of Forest now that you're back in the Premier League, Des?
Well, first of all, I agree with everything you say about Steve Cooper. I absolutely love the guy. You know, I've had a conversation with Kevin Campbell myself about Steve Cooper, and we kind of, in a way, likened him to Brian Clough a little bit. You know, that's high praise in this part of the world. That's the highest esteem you can get. But just the way he deals with people, the way he deals with players, the way he takes control of a situation. You know, he's also the nicest guy in the world, but he's got this way of dealing with people where he commands respect. He expects the best of them, and he gets more out of players. You know, the players he made better last year to get his promotion, the turnaround was phenomenal. We was drifting away into oblivion under Chris Hughton, and the guy come in, and all of a sudden we start winning football matches, and we didn't just win a game, lose a game, you know, draw a game. We just won game after game after game, and we was exceeding all expectations. Forest are known for having a demanding fan base, despite the years we've been out of the Premier League. You know, we still see ourselves as a big club. We still expect big things, but he kind of exceeded all our expectations before we got carried away with ourselves. The cup run, you know, coming up against Premiership teams, he was tactically, he was spot on. You know, everything that happened last season worked. We beat Arsenal, we beat Liverpool, we ran Liverpool we beat Leicester and ran Liverpool very close. And then, of course, the running at the end of the season and the playoff game. At the end of the season, Forest was, again, coming back to Sam's point about 11 players. You know, we only had 11 players. Steve Cooper knew he only had 11 players. But somehow he was getting them on that pitch. You could see they were the walking wounded. Whatever he was doing, whatever he was saying, he was getting the best out of them. So going into the new campaign, which is where we're at now, you know, we're all expecting that as well. We're not expecting to sort of fall at the first hurdle almost. We're expecting to carry on this wave without getting too carried away, because we know the difference. You know, we've been out of it for so long. We've just looked on up at the big gap that's there. But we expected just to sort of surprise teams along the way. You know, Cooper will get it right, I believe. We've had to make a lot of signings. The problem he was left with when he came in was we had 5 loan players in the starting 11, which all left in the summer. So not only were we looking for 2 or 3 to improve, perhaps like a Bournemouth or a Fulham, you know, on their options, we were looking for 8 or 9 players, and that's a massive turnaround straight away. So whilst we are expecting to be the surprise package, for Cooper to get it right, to be quite comfortable in the end. There's going to be a transition period. We're going to have to be realistic about that. On the face of it, going to Newcastle looked like a nice fixture. In the past, they've been slow starters. They've been a bit brittle at times. So we thought, who knows, we could go up there, get a point. Some of the new players might gel straight away. We know our Cooper can be spot on with his tactics. But that was possibly one of the worst possible starts outside the top 5, top 6. Going away to that big stadium, trying to adapt to a new league, the pace of the game. Newcastle's midfield was absolutely incredible. On the player for player, it's an incredible lineup, and the strength in there. Forest just kind of got lost a little bit, and coming out of the ground, I felt a little bit concerned. I thought, oh God, this is a bit more than I thought it was. But then sort of having a chance to sort of settle down, think about it, listen to a few Newcastle fans on phone-ins on the way home. They said Forest will be all right as well, So what I'm kind of getting to there is, I guess that the Premier League takes some adapting to. The pace, the other teams, what's expected of you. And whilst Forest is still doing business, because one thing we was playing catch-up. Not only were these 5 loan players that had to go back, we finished the season right at the end of May. 3-4 weeks behind every club. And I know there wasn't much business going on early throughout football, but every time Steve Cooper's asked the question now, are you looking at more signings? He's saying we need them. We have to. We simply have to. We spent the best part of 80 million quid. We've signed players like Lingard and some of these players from abroad. So there's expectation there, but then when we look at it, the amount of money we're spending is probably not quite the level required. At the moment, we're in a battle with Wolves for Morgan Gibbs-White. And again, it's a player that's not played in the Premier League. But the latest bid apparently was £42 million. And these numbers are just, like Matt said earlier with wages, these numbers are staggering to Forest. Fans are saying he's not worth it. But I'm thinking, we're probably looking at Saturday, looking at the players that we lost last season, and the players already coming in don't quite look up to that level. They all went back to Premier League clubs or moved to Premier League clubs. In the case of Jed Spence, it looks like it's going to be a tough ask. And the owner, to his credit, said after promotion, this club's going to write its new history. He's probably the most demanding person around the club. He wants success. He stood on the balcony at the council house in front of the crowds when we got promoted, saying, "We now write a new history." So with him, Cooper's ability to get the best out of players, to get more than his money's worth. Some of those players we sent back off loan. If it was any other manager, they would have been worth nothing. Jed Spence, for example, we could have probably signed him for £50,000 at the start of last season. He's just gone to Spurs for 20 million. And we've kind of been the victim of our own success in that sense. So we're looking into a new market. And just at the moment, it's been a tough ask. I think there's a bit of frustration on Cooper's part, getting the right people, getting some Premiership experience in there. Because the one real telling factor for me on Saturday from the Newcastle game was when people ask me who played well, who can take it in the Premier League. For me, it was the players that had been there. Dean Henderson looked comfortable. Jack Colback, even though he's probably a little beyond the Premier League, he's played there and got experience. And then Jesse Lingard, whilst he didn't have a great game, you could tell those three had played in the Premier League. And that was really striking about the signings that have been thrown in. So I think there's a lot more business to do. There's a lot more to come from Forest, and hopefully they'll prove you right on your point that we can really click on sort of as the season goes on and be that surprise package.
It's a great insight, mate. I've got to say, absolutely spot on with everything you're saying. It's a great insight into the goings on at Nottingham Forest. I think it's sounding very positive if the owner is that ambitious. Steve Cooper's definitely ambitious. The team look hungry. I think your recruitment's been good. And what I do like, and some people will laugh at the Gibbs-White stuff and say that Lingard's on ridiculous wages. you're giving it a go. You're getting the players in that you think are going to go and take you to the next level. And you've got to trust the board, the ownership, and the manager with that, because to be fair, they've shown evidence that they want to get it right. And they've shown evidence that they're hungry and they're ambitious to get these signings in the door. Nottingham Forest have been way too long out of the Premier League. And I want to come to Sam on that point. And Sam, you've been so vocal about how important it is for Bournemouth going up, down, up, down. You want to be in this Premier League. What are that fan base feeling at Forest right now? Because they've had, 23 years out of the Premier League. It's all about enjoying it, but at the same time, they don't want to be in that championship again. So what's your thoughts of Forest going into this year, mate?
Yeah, 23 years, huge club, nearly got into the playoffs a few seasons ago, and they were pipped on by Swansea, wasn't it? On goal difference at the end of the season. It was like tragic. Yeah, it was, tragic end of the season. But I mean, a club like that is absolutely so massive. And look, like I say, when we played them on the penultimate game of the season, we were seeing all these social media things, like, hashtag AFCB, hashtag NFFC. And it was like Liverpool in the Champions League, flares going off, them sending their coaches off. And, as a Bournemouth fan with a small fan base, small stadium, small everything, it was really intimidating. And thankfully, it was the players on the pitch that did the business, because as a fan base, we were crapping ourselves really, because we're thinking, oh my God, their form has been immaculate until now. And you know what? I've got to say, yes, like Steve Cooper, what a manager. Like when we played Forest at the start of the season at their place, Chris Hughton was in charge. Really, it also, everyone seemed very separate. The fans, the staff, the players. As soon as Cooper comes in, been reading articles about him and watched videos, he gets everyone and he takes them to one side. He chats to them. He treats the tea lady with respect. He's this person that brings everyone together, and the players have really bought into it, and the fans have as well. And it's a bit like Newcastle, the point that was being made earlier. Like, that's the same as what Eddie's done at Newcastle. And it's like having a 12th man. And when you've got a club that's so big and the fans are behind them as well, it's almost like an immovable force, really. And I am glad they got promoted.
Good name for a podcast, that, Sam. 12th man. Good
name. Yeah, great. Yeah, great. Yeah,
good segue.
I think, and in my mind, I sort of, I probably didn't want Forest to go up, because they were one of the teams that I knew that probably would stay up. I was looking at a team, maybe Huddersfield to go up, or maybe even Luton Town or something, because we thought we would have a chance to finish above them. Forest, it's going to be very difficult. And after 23 years, they certainly deserve to be there. I have doubts whether Steve Cooper can gel all these players together, but like I say, it is early days. I wonder what impact it's going to have on the rest of the squad, having all these, all these big name players, but players like Jesse Lingard in. But you know what? I'm sure he'll probably use his experience to, drive the rest of the lads. So it's going to be a really interesting season. I think, I think they aren't going to be as safe as you think, Dan. I don't I think they're going to be lower mid-table, but they'll probably have enough to sort of avoid the relegation, I'd think.
Fair play. Matt, I'd love to get your thoughts, man, because Brentford are a side that absolutely loved getting into the Premier League, and rightly so. I don't want to remind myself, but I was there last season, first game, when we lost to you guys on the Friday night, and you could see the fan base were absolutely loving it. And you know what was amazing about that? It wasn't just the fact that football was back due to COVID. Football was back for the new season. Football was back for Brentford, because Brentford were a team that had just gone up and obviously stayed up. And I think what I'm getting at is, the importance of what that means. And that's why I've tipped Forest to have a good season, because I think everyone's going to be behind them in terms of their fan base to keep them up. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on where you think they'll finish this season, mate.
I think they could be a surprise package. Again, when you look before a ball's kicked in the season, you look at kind of the stronger squads, the bigger squads. And I know that Forest weren't particularly huge, but I think there's a lot to be said about the 12th man, without plugging the podcast name, but just like in terms of people, Forest is different to Brentford in terms of, like they said, like going back to where they belong, whereas Brentford for me will always be a League One club. So like the fact that we're here is being on cloud nine, and just it's fantastic, and it's incredible. And I don't know the thing. I think you've got the clubs that need to go back to where the big time, like your Forest, clubs like Brentford that haven't been there for a long time, so it's alien. And then you've got the yo-yo clubs as well, which is like, I don't think I'd ever particularly like to be a yo-yo club, but it might be too easy to say that now. But in terms of Forest, I think I'd put the St James's behind you, and I think you do all right this season.
Yeah, I think it's fair. Listen, Des, you're getting quite a lot of people expecting you to do well, so don't let us down, mate. It's looking like it's gonna
I
be
think
that. What I want to go on,
I
Des.
think what they've done is I mentioned Cooper, I mentioned the owner, some of these like Jesse Lingard coming in. All of a sudden, I've always had a problem over the last few years of Forest saying they're a big club, but they've not had a winning mentality. They've not had a siege mentality. And at times, towards the end of last season, whether it's Bournemouth or Huddersfield, they've been looking in going, oh, they think they're bigger and better than us. But in many ways, whilst I'm not an arrogant person, I quite like that from the club, because they've got to get winners about. For 23 years, we found every way not to get into the Premier League. Whenever we made a playoff, we blew it up big time. And then that last game of the season, with about 15 minutes to go, they needed a 5-goal swing, Swansea, and we blew it up. And that's because the whole club, it was almost as if it had just settled for what it was. And you look at other teams, being a Forest fan, when I was growing up, you looked at other teams and you thought, well, they're perennial League One, perhaps a Brentford, with all due respect. But all of a sudden, we'd become that. And now they've got winners in. They've got Cooper. They've got Marinakis, the owner. Whether Lingard works out or not, the pedigree's there. They're making a bold statement saying, this is what our club are doing. The fans really get behind the club. What Sam said about the send-off to Bournemouth and the way we take numbers away and the way we sing at home. Jurgen Klopp saying this is like a European night at Anfield. Again, the club's being taken notice of. And when it's taken notice of, when it's serious about what it's doing, everybody's going to look in and go, wow, there's something quite good going on there because they understand what went before and how good it was. And if we can replicate any of that at any given time, some of us are going to be in for a really, really good ride.
Yeah, 100% you are, man. And I love the positivity. And I hope you do have a good season. I can't lie. I want to touch just quickly before we do wrap up on Fulham. I want to touch on Everton and I want to touch on Leeds because obviously we do have reps for those clubs that can't be with us tonight, but they will be here next week. I've got to run down all three of them very quickly and then get you free to do the same before we wrap up. I thought Fulham were the surprise of the weekend for me. Mitrovic, I've always liked him. I've always thought he was a real handful, but he was always a championship striker because whenever he come into the Premier League, he could never cut it. And I thought this season I was on the brink of putting him in my fantasy team just because of the amount of goals he scored last season in the championship. Decided not to and regretted it, to be honest. But when I look at what he did against Liverpool, he was an absolute bully against the top side. And I think when you come up against players like Van Dijk, Joel Matip, and then obviously their fullbacks, you're always going to have a tough time. And he just wouldn't have thought that looking at Mitrovic. I thought he was sensational. But what I really liked and was impressed about Fulham with was their never say die attitude, their intensity, the fact they didn't want to give Liverpool any time on the ball. And Liverpool had to take, a few subs and changes like Nunez and a couple more like Harvey Elliott to actually take something from that game. And I thought that was really impressive for me to come in as a Fulham side that everyone thought, oh, here we go, a yo-yo club, up and down, up and down. They've really come up against the best there, so I was really impressed. As for Leeds, I've got to say, impressed with their result. I think Wolves are a good side. They're a good setup. Bruno Lag's got them well drilled. A team that hasn't done much in the transfer window, I can't lie. But what Leeds have done is completely revamped their side. And Jesse March has got his kind of teeth in there now, and he's trying to look at replacing the likes of Rafinha, Calvin Phillips. And I think they put on a good show against Wolves, I have to say. And then, of course, Everton. Listen, I told you about my prediction show. The three that I had tipped to go down were Bournemouth, Fulham and Everton. I don't rate Lampard. They've done nothing up top, in my opinion, to replace any of the players they've got rid of. The window they're having is a championship window, really, isn't it? Tarkowski, half-decent defender. Connor Cody, good defender. But as their time passed them, are they in the decline of footballers? Possibly. I look at what they're doing with Dwight McNeil. People say a great signing. 7 goals in 4 seasons. Is that a good player? Not really my cup of tea. Not going to keep them up, in my opinion. And I look at players like Dele Alli, and he just needs to be chucked out now, really. I mean, the guy is a disgrace. I hated him anyway, obviously, for obvious reasons. And I thought he was one of the most overhyped about players I've ever seen in my life. So I look at Everton and just think, wow, there's some problems there. I don't rate Lampard. I tip them to go down. Calvert-Lewin's out yet again for 6 or 7 weeks. I think Everton are going to struggle. And it showed against Chelsea because Chelsea were poor. They were so poor. And they are depleted. They've not really sorted their summer out yet. And Everton just didn't look like doing anything against them, in my opinion. So I don't know what your thoughts are. I'll come to you first, Sam, about the three that aren't here in terms of Fulham, Leeds and Everton. But that was my rundown, mate, of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Fulham were very, very good. I don't think Liverpool were at their best. Certainly in the first half they weren't. But yeah, Mitrovic, I think he can do it in the Premier League. When they were last up in the Premier League, Scott Parker and him had a bit of a falling out, crosswords, whatever you want to put it down to, and didn't play him as much as he probably should have. But it's clear that the talent is there. He can be a menace and can be a bully. I'm not saying he's going to score 40 plus like he did in the Championship last season, but he'll certainly get on the score sheet, and he'll be looking to get 15, like 20 goals. But I think Marco Silva, I wasn't sure how he was going to do it at Fulham, but last season he proved me wrong. He proved a lot of football fans wrong, and did really well for them. And I think some of the signings, I think they're looking to strengthen in certain areas, and that we've got a few weeks left of the transfer window. And if they do that, I think with Mitrovic as their talisman, they have got a really good chance. And also I just want to mention Everton as well. I think you're probably right. They will be in trouble this season, but I always feel as though big clubs will probably avoid it. So whether they'll go down, not too sure. But I agree with you that Frank Lampard, I'm not convinced about him as a manager. Really, when you look at his CV, it's not particularly great. How he's at that size of club, I'm not really sure. He needs to be cutting his teeth maybe for a longer period of time at a club, maybe in a division below. But yeah, I will worry for them a little bit, but I think they'll just be all right.
Fair play. I think it's fair, honest assessment. Matt, what's your thoughts about Fulham, Leeds, and of course Everton?
And Everton's an interesting one, and we've talked a lot about clubs kind of being big clubs throughout this podcast, and I always think of them as such a huge kind of Premiership entity. So I went to the away game last year where we beat them 3-2 towards the end of the season, and without going back over it again, like that whole 12-man thing, I think Goodison's the loudest stadium I've ever been to. It was like, and they were in a position where they thought they had to win that game and they didn't, but they still stayed up, obviously. But before the game, people were there like 3 hours before, letting off flares, just massive. And it was a cauldron, and I feel like that could play a part, because on the pitch, I don't think they've got a chance at the moment. To be honest, talk about players like Dele Alli. I mean, I didn't even think Richarlison was that great, but he did a lot for them. I think if they keep a hold of Gordon, maybe a bit of a chance. But like, if Everton were Fulham, you'd be saying they're going down in terms of like, it's just because Everton are such a big club that you can't fathom them going down. And even when Burnley went down last season, I kind of thought they were similar, maybe not at the same level, but it is weird when you see a team so established go down, like Newcastle many years ago, like to Sunderland that went down and never came back. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're going to struggle. And I would probably say that Lampard might be the first casualty this season. So I think we'll know by Christmas where they're heading, and I think we're probably all in unison as to where we think they're heading. Leeds, just a wild card. I think I'd liken us a bit to a Leeds. Just like, they had some fantastic players. Have they replaced them? In my opinion, not. But again, a Leeds fan watching week in, week out might be able to shed a bit more light on it. And then Fulham, it pains me to say, but I think Fulham are up for a little while. I said it to everyone. Fantasy League at the beginning of the season, everyone's like, Mitrovic won't do it. Called it straight away, kind of very much like a Pukki for Norwich a few years ago. I think he'll hit the ground running. I think he'll at least get 10 goals this season in the Prem. And yeah, I think Fulham are playing, and that's more than just the game against Liverpool. They've looked good. They look solid in the Championship. Unfortunately, I think Fulham are here to stay.
Unfortunately, I love that. No, I must admit, I think what you're saying is sense, and you might be right with the Frank Lampard situation. Who knows? Maybe James Tarkowski's there for Sean Dyche to come and collect him, put the best out of him again, and Lampard goes. That could happen. You never know. I think that's what I'll be looking at an ownership, because Sean Dyche is proven. I don't think Frank Lampard is. Des, your final thoughts, mate?
Yeah, I think for the three of them, the key thing is going to be the number 9. We spoke about Mitrovic. Calvert-Lewin is now injured for 6 weeks for Everton, and Bamford is coming back for Leeds. So I think Mitrovic and the way Fulham play, and what I said earlier about getting points on the board, if they carry that momentum on from Liverpool, I think they're good. They'll probably be in for a decent season by their standards. I saw a few times last season. You know, one of the real thumpings we got under Steve Cooper was a 4-1 home defeat where they were 4-0 up just after half time, and then we played them away and we actually nicked it. But the pace they play at, and Mitrovic, whilst he is a number 9, just almost being given a free role. And what Sam mentioned, the fallout with Scott Parker, it's almost like they've put their arm around him now and said, "You do what you do. You know, you're going to play. You're going to score goals when you're in the team." And I think it just sort of sends some positivity around the rest of the team. And with the start they've had, I think they'll be all right. I do worry for Leeds and Everton. I think injuries held them back last season. If they can't get them players to come back and sort of hit the ground running again, they're going to really struggle. Calvert-Lewin being out is a massive blow. And like you guys, I think Lampard's going to be the first one out of a job. One factor we've got to take into consideration this year is the World Cup. Owners and chairmen are going to be getting a little bit twitchy a little bit sooner than normal, because if you're at the bottom of the league going into that World Cup break, it's going to be tough to come back from. There's going to be a transfer window in January, and if you picked up injuries and you've lost your best players, so I think it's going to be really tough. I've tipped Everton to go down. I don't think Frank Lampard's a particularly good manager. I've seen the way he almost dragged Derby through, and that's the only thing he's really got to sort of cling on to. He dragged them into the playoffs when really they'd kind of given up in about the March time. And then Leeds again, I just think with the players they've lost, you know, 2 absolute cracking players. And last season, they really struggled. I thought Leeds did brilliantly last season to stay up. They got some really big away results when you wasn't expecting it. I actually seen a game at West Ham when they won 4-2. And they played some good stuff. But again, I think they'd have to sort of carry on the Bielsa style, a bit like we said about Fulham, you know, just keep attacking teams. In many ways, attack will be the best form of defence. And with Brentford coming back, that might just be the difference in them staying up again this time. Someone who can hold the ball up and almost keep it away, keep it at that end of the pitch, and bring some of the good players. You know, they've got some. We spoke a lot about championship level signings. They did exactly the same, and they signed some really good players that have kept them there. So I think Leeds will be okay. I think Fulham will give it a great shot now, having tipped them to go down, and I think Everton possibly are going to be the ones that really do struggle. Again, looking at this weekend's fixtures and the fact they've got Forest the weekend after, which I'll be going to, it'll be interesting to see after those first 3 games where they kind of lie. With quite a nice opening set, if you're honest, apart from Chelsea.
Yeah, fair play. I think everyone's given their honest opinion in relation to that, and I do think that I've probably just about got it right with who I have put on this show for who I think is going to be in and around that mix. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be a great show, this one. I'm really looking forward to as the weeks go past, and I want to thank you all for coming on, and I can't wait for next week already. Thank you all so much in the chat as well. Please smash a like. Please go and follow everyone on their socials, and they're all in the description. Make sure you go and subscribe to all the channels. Make sure you support the guys and support the content. My thanks to Sam. Absolutely great having you back on, bro. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to your weekly chats with you, mate.
Pleasure, mate.
Legend. Matt, debut, absolute legendary debut, mate. That's a debut like a Gabriel Jesus debut, mate, or a William Saliba debut. Happy with that one, bro. Thanks so much for coming on, mate.
Top man, thanks for having me. Nice to meet you boys as well.
You too.
So, man, there's legend, mate. I can listen to you all day, bro. You just seem to know everything about Nottingham Forest and give a great insight into it. So I'm really looking forward to having you on the channel, mate. Thanks so much for coming on.
No, always good to meet you guys.
Nice one. Guys, thank you all so much in the chat. We'll be back next week, same time. Hopefully, by then, we'll have some happy faces. But trust me, there will definitely be some sad ones because it's always the way it works. We will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening. Take care and
Cheers.
up the Arsenal.